The Atlanta Braves have done a fantastic job of developing pitchers, but when are we going to see the next big position player prospect for the Atlanta Braves become a superstar? I'll tell you why it could be Jose Perdomo on this week's episode of Locked On Braves. We'll cover much more in today's episode, so let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I'm your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Check out the podcast there at LockedOn_Braves. If you're new and watching this video on YouTube, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below. If you're listening on the audio version, you can help out by leaving me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And thanks as always for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. It is our Minors Monday episode. We're going to be spotlighting shortstop prospect Jose Perdomo. I'm going to tell you why he is the most important prospect for the Atlanta Braves in 2025. Get some of your thoughts on that as well. We'll also cover some of the news happening around Major League Baseball, a trade between the Dodgers and the Reds. Does that open up anything before perhaps a Braves and Reds trade? We'll discuss that and get around to some of the other news as well. If you have some questions, though, and you're here live, send those in as well. I'll try to get to those later in the podcast. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're going to get started today with Jose Perdomo in our minor league spotlight. It is Minors Monday. And this week we're talking about Jose Perdomo. And to be honest, I don't have much to discuss in terms of video breakdown because I really don't have any video to break down on Perdomo, as we didn't see him stateside this year, and we didn't see much of him this year as he was injured to begin the season. But just to give you the background on Jose Perdomo, signed for $5 million out of Venezuela in the 2024 international signing class, by far one of the biggest signings for the Braves after their international restrictions were lifted. He was ranked as the third best prospect in that class. Now, something to remember with these international rankings, you can go back and look at them for years past. Look, you're trying to judge guys who are signed when they're 14 and 15, and even when they're officially signed, they're 16, 17, 18 years old. It is really difficult to try to rank how these players are going to develop and what they're going to look like in 4 or 5 years whenever they hit the big leagues. But it's, still better than not. He was seen as one of the best players in last year's international group. A scout at that time actually compared him to Miguel Cabrera in terms of what Miggy looked like at 16, 17 years old. He said Jose Perdomo looked very similar. And that puts a lot of big expectations on Perdomo and for fans as well. We all read that and think, could this be the next international superstar to come through the Braves system? Others considered him to be the best pure hitter in that signing class. So again, some big expectations for Jose Perdomo before we really even saw him take the field. And we're talking about a kid who was, 17 at the time when he officially signed. So it's very exciting. It's very promising. He's listed as a shortstop. He's 5'11", 180, but clearly at 18 years old now, there's still plenty of room for growth with him. It's expected from what you see right now that he can stay on the left side of the infield, perhaps even at shortstop, which would be great for the Atlanta Braves. The Braves were initially going to, for this past year, the Braves were initially going to send Perdomo to the Florida Complex League. He was on that roster, sounded like he was headed there, which is a bit unusual because typically for international signees, you'll see them start, internationally and then come over and maybe play in some FCL before going up to Augusta. So the Braves were going to push him and send him to the Florida Complex League. Not that it's necessarily the best competition there, but it was somewhat significant at the time. But an undisclosed injury caused him to miss the beginning of the year. Instead, he made his professional debut in the Dominican League, but not until July 16th. And he only played in 8 games. And he never played on consecutive days. So we honestly didn't get much of anything from Perdomo last year, which is okay. The year after he signs, international signee, that's okay. But would have loved to seen a little bit more. He got 20 at bats. He was 5 for 20, no extra base hits, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts, 2 stolen bases, and a caught stealing. Again, nothing really to go off of there, but he at least did get on the field and get his feet wet, but not what we were hoping for. I mean, we were hoping we were going to see him in the Florida Complex League to begin the year, hopefully get off to a hot start. I mean, who knows? He could have even ended up at Augusta. It's happened before, but wasn't the case. Injuries really derailed his 2024, and you hope that doesn't become a thing either. You look at Ambiorix Taveras, one of the top signings internationally for the Braves after the restrictions were lifted, and he seems to have setback after setback with injuries. Not that there's really anything to relate the two guys together, but you want to see these guys get going, especially that young. You want to see them get as many reps as possible. And it's just a bummer because it's essentially a wasted year for a guy who I think had he come in, had he played in the Florida Complex League and had a big year, I think we're talking about a guy that many people might be considering for the top 100. So my question for you, and the question that I'm trying to answer on today's podcast, is one that it's not that I'm willing to die on a hill for, but I think Jose Perdomo for me is the biggest prospect for the upcoming season. And here's why. The Braves need that next big positional superstar. And maybe it's Drake Baldwin. It's hard for me to buy into that, especially if he stays at the catcher position, where you're looking at best case scenario, he becomes a 20 home run hitting catcher. And if that's the case, I mean, you're looking at a potential all-star level player. And hopefully that is the case for Drake Baldwin. But again, maybe this is me just being the shortstop ball guy that I am. I want to see a big time shortstop. I want to see a big time, center fielder. I want to see a big time position player in the infield or in the outfield. That's what I'm looking for. And Perdomo seems like the best bet to be that guy. And again, I hate to jump over a Drake Baldwin, who could be a very good player, perhaps an all-star level player, if that power potential plays at the catcher position. I hate to jump over a guy like Nacho Alvarez, who I've loved for years, but I just don't see him being that superstar quality player. And even if those guys do become good big leaguers, you need another wave of guys to come through on the position player side of things. Look, this window for the Atlanta Braves, I don't believe it's that close to closing. Maybe the next 4 years or so, which is when Perdomo would realistically be looking to enter the big leagues. But at some point, you need to start preparing for that next wave. We've said for years we're not worried about the Braves farm system because you have this core at the big league level that's locked up for so long. Who cares if the Braves are bottom 5 in the farm system? And you could say that for the last 3 or 4 years. But like I said, now with, again, the window's not closing. I think this window is still here for, at least the next 3 to 4 years. But you need to start building that foundation now for the next wave of Braves players to come up and be a part of that. At that point, will be some veterans and to bring in that next wave. That needs to start happening now, and it needs to start happening with guys like Jose Perdomo, some of these international players that they've signed, a couple more that they're about to sign in a couple of weeks that we'll talk about. But that to me is why Perdomo, I think, is one of the most important prospects in 2025. One, we didn't get to see him last year, so really need to see him this year and get a better idea of what his potential is. And if he reaches that potential, I think he shoots up to being one of the Braves' top prospects, perhaps be on some top 100 list. And at that point, don't know what's going to happen with all the other prospects this year. Perhaps AJ Smith-Shawver and Waldrop graduate, or if they don't graduate, that could mean that they've fallen back. But you're looking at two guys who have been on top 100 lists. Drake Baldwin's on some top 100 lists. Nacho's been on some top 100 lists. I think J.R. Ritchie can get on a top 100 list. And now you're talking about Jose Perdomo, another guy who I think could be up there. And you're looking at potential three starters, 3 position players in your system that have top 100 potential, or at least have been at that level before. So I'm really excited about Jose Perdomo. I'm really excited about his 2025 because I think the Braves need him. I think they need him to be, doesn't necessarily have to be a superstar level player. He doesn't have to be Miguel Cabrera, but there needs to be some hype, certainly, I think, with him to kind of carry in that next wave after this group is gone. Like I said, in the next 3 to 4 years, when Ozzy and Ronald and those guys are likely gone, and you're left with the veterans of Riley and Olsen. You need a next wave, another young wave to get ready to come in. Like I said, we could lean on this group that the Braves have now, but you can't really do that anymore. Now you need to start building that next wave. Who's going to be that next core for the Atlanta Braves? And hopefully Jose Perdomo is a big part of that next core, and hopefully we see that in 2025. Now, I asked a lot of you who you think is the most important prospect for the Atlanta Braves in 2025. I'll read some of your responses here next. The NFL postseason is getting underway, and you can get in on all the action with FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. You head on over to FanDuel.com. They also have lines out there for the upcoming Major League Baseball season. If you want to check that out, World Series odds, the Braves are now down to plus 900. They were plus 850. They're falling. Things are falling apart for the Atlanta Braves. Still only have the second best odds to win it all. They got MVP odds out there, Cy Young odds, Chris Sale with the third best odds to win the NL Cy Young with Paul Skeens at the top. You can see all that over at FanDuel.com. And again, right now you can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. Also, make sure you visit FanDuel.com/playsafe to help you, for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way that you play. Make this postseason unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thanks as always for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. Go check out Locked On MLB for your second listen, solely keeping you up to date with everything happening around Major League Baseball. And it was getting pretty quiet there for a while, but finally late in the day on Monday, we're seeing some moves happen. Now, I asked you, who is the most important prospect for the Braves in 2025? And it doesn't have to be someone who will impact the big league level. Like for me, I chose Jose Perdomo. I'm not expecting him to impact the big league level in 2025, but I do think the Braves need him to come up and be maybe the centerpiece of the next core for the Braves. Tom Mlan still says, based on the rosters configured, it has to be any prospect that will be the fifth starter. That is the one who will make the most difference to the success of the team. Sean Murphy, defender, says Perdomo desperately need a big-name international free agent position player to pan out. All he needs to do is start opening some eyes. So Sean Murphy, defender, right there with me, and I'm also a Sean Murphy defender. Maybe we're best friends. We just found out. Caleb Hudgens, can Caminiti's development to see what his ceiling is? I agree with that as well. I'm excited to see what can Caminiti turn into an ace type potential. Is it a 1 or 2 starter, or is it a number 3 type of ceiling for Caminiti? Looking forward to figuring that out in 2025. Wesley Rayner says, need a position player to emerge. One of the shortstops, preferably, whether it be Taveras, Perdomo, maybe Nacho. I'd settle for Guanipa happily, though. It's a big season for Guanipa as well. That swing, I feel like he struggled a bit his first professional season. I need to make some adjustments with that swing. There's some obvious power there. But Guanipa's another one, too. I said earlier, I want to see somebody on the infield, shortstop, outfielder, really emerge. I hope it's Perdomo as a shortstop guy, but if it's going to be Guanipa, I'd be okay with that as well. C says, I'm excited about Caminiti and his potential. What's the earliest he could be up? Will he be a spring training attendee? Probably won't be on the spring training roster, but I'd say probably at least 2 or 3 more years before we even, consider seeing Caminiti. Jacob, I think Nacho's progression will be huge to look out for. Scott Switzer says Drew Hackenberg. Jay Rowell says easily J.R. Ritchie. I obviously love J.R. Ritchie, as you know, if you're an everydayer here on the podcast. I already think he's going to be a really good player, but I do agree that, now further removed from Tommy John, I'd like to see that velo tick back up. And as he gets to higher levels, gets to AA at some point in the season, I think, I do want to see J.R. Ritchie kind of take that next step. Gustavo Nava says Waldrop a lie. He says looking forward to seeing what Cam Caminiti can do. Going back to Nava's comment on Waldrop, I think this year it's a big season for Waldrop. And okay, what is it going to be? Can you get it together enough to be a starting pitcher, or do we need to start that transition to the bullpen? Again, I've talked a lot about the Braves being so hesitant to move guys, starting pitchers, to the bullpen and knowing when to pull that plug. I know it's not long after Waldrop has been drafted, but it's not like he's a 19, 20-year-old coming up. He's older than A.J. Smith-Shawver. I feel like this is the season. You get halfway through it, and it's just you're not seeing any progression from Waldrop because I really didn't see any progression from him last year. Then maybe you do have to consider moving him to the bullpen to get him up to the big leagues where, again, if he can do in one inning stints with that splitter, I think he'd be really effective. And then maybe down the road, you transition him back. It wouldn't be the first time that's ever happened. So I do think it's an important season in that regard for Hurst and Waldrop. But thank you so much for sending that in. When Gracer coming into as a high schooler, not going to see him even at AA for a couple of years. Yeah, and he reclassified too, so he was really young for the last draft. So it would be a while. All right, let's go to the news of the day because I want to talk about this trade between the Dodgers and the Reds. I see BC in here, probably wants to hear me tell about how I think this is a steal for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Now, only thing I'll say is you go out and sign Ha-Sung Kim, which I don't think we talked about that last week, but the Dodgers went out and signed Ha-Sung Kim, not Ha-Sung Kim, but Ha-Sung Kim for 3 years, $12.5 million, utility type player. Now it sounds like he's going to be their second baseman. I don't know how I feel about that as a Dodgers fan. BC, feel free to let me know. But then they go out and trade Gavin Lux, which I get it. You know, Gavin Lux getting pushed out there. He just couldn't handle it defensively. Hasn't really lived up to the hype offensively, although he ended last year kind of hot for the Dodgers. But, I mean, I think this is a steal for the Dodgers. You're giving up a guy who you were essentially pushing out that you couldn't play, and you're getting a guy in Mike Sirota, who's an outfield prospect just taken in the third round of last year's draft. But here's the biggest part of this. The Reds also sent their Comp A pick to the Dodgers, which is going to be around 35, 37. But the bigger part of this is that's $2.5 million more dollars that the Dodgers have for their bonus pool. This is similar to when the Braves traded Drew Waters and they got that comp pick. It added a lot of money to their bonus pool so they could go out and do more things in the draft. This now gives the Dodgers, who are going to be picking at the back end of the first round, as they pretty much always are, it's going to give them more flexibility to take a shot, you know, in the first or second round or with that comp pick because they're going to have more money to spend now. So I thought this was a really good deal for the Dodgers, as much as I hate to say it. I don't get this from the Reds standpoint. They already had a decent hitting, poor fielding second baseman in Jonathan India that they just traded for Brady Singer. Now you get Lux, who is also not a good defender like Jonathan India and hasn't really been able to hit to the level that Jonathan India could. And you only get Lux for 2 years. He only has 2 years of control. And you get that, and you give up a solid outfield prospect that you just drafted and $2.5 million towards your bonus pool and a 35th, 37th overall pick in the upcoming draft. I just don't get this. As Braves Thrill says, the Reds just accidentally contributed to the evil empire. I don't understand this trade. And from the Reds' perspective, it just does not make a lot of sense to me. So, again, it's the Dodgers. They find way. They've made another steal here to the Reds. I just don't get it from the Reds' perspective. Now, immediately, Braves fans, we see another team making a deal. We're thinking, how can we get involved? How can this benefit us? I've seen a lot of people thinking, does this mean Matt McLain is available? I don't think so. I think they're going to move Matt McLain to the outfield where he played a lot in college at UCLA. I think that's what we're going to do with Matt McLain, which means it could make one of their outfielders available, like a TJ Friedl or a Jake Fraley. Now, I don't necessarily love either one of those guys, but they're both left-handed hitters. Friedl can play all over, but he has reverse splits. He's actually been better against lefties over the last several years. Fraley has good splits against righties, which is great, and it's under control for 2 more years. So maybe that's where you could see the Braves and Reds hook up on a move. Reds perhaps needing some more pitching. You could see a swap there. But I don't think Matt McLain is going to be the guy that gets moved in all of this. SoCal Braves says that Lux was in high demand, and that's why the Reds had to overpay. I don't know that was Lux really in that high of demand. I mean, who was really wanting a guy that couldn't fit at shortstop? So the Dodgers had to move him out there and put Mookie Betts there, who's not great at shortstop either, hasn't been good defensively, and really hasn't broken out with the bat like we thought. And look, for Lux, he's going to a much better ballpark situation, and hopefully that helps him. And I like the Reds. It's one of the teams that I like to watch and cheer for, a good young team. So hopefully this does help him. But man, that seems like a lot to give up. I'm seeing some discussion about what Jose Perdomo signed for. He signed for $5 million. The Braves had just a little over $5 million to spend in that international class. That was something that I wanted to mention because they pretty much gave up all of their international signing pool money that year to get Jose Perdomo. I want to say they had $5.2 million available that year, and they spent $5 million of that to get Perdomo. So the Braves invested a lot in him to be that guy, and I really hope he starts to show us that he can be that guy in 2025, which is why I am really excited about him. All right, there is some other news to get to on the day, but let me know what you think about that Reds-Dodgers trade. Do you think that's a steal for the Dodgers like I do, and do you think that this perhaps opens up some other moves for the Reds that the Braves could perhaps take advantage of? Maybe the Braves can get the Reds to make a dumb move. And I don't know. I mean, Bryce Elder for Jake Fraley, I would do that and give you another left-handed hitting outfielder as well. But let me know your thoughts about that in the comment section below. We'll get into some more news here next, including some international prospects that the Braves could be signing in the next couple of weeks. We'll discuss that here next. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event, and you don't when you use Gametime. Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. You can filter it for a view from your seat and their best price guarantee. So Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets because you know you're getting the best deal. Gametime is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. See the view from your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you get there. And you can filter it for their all-in prices so you know the total up front. There's no surprises when you get to the checkout screen. And you can buy tickets in seconds with just 2 taps. And the Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. You find tickets in the same section and row for less. Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Gametime app today. Create an account and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today at last-minute tickets. Lowest price guaranteed. All right, again, thank you for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and leave me a comment down below. All right, let's get into some other news around Major League Baseball. Top international prospects will be eligible to sign starting on January 15th, so we're less than 10 days away from that. The Braves will have about $6.2 million to spend this year. The top prospect that the Braves are expected to sign is Diego Torrens, 16-year-old outfielder from I think he's from Cuba, but I didn't write that down. I expected to sign for around $3 million. At one point, Baseball America had him ranked as their 5th best prospect, but he has seemed to go down some lists that I've seen here recently. But either way, he's going to be a top 15 type of prospect for the Atlanta Braves, and that's who they're looking to sign, where they're going to spend most of their money this upcoming international class. He's actually out of the Dominican Republic, so I wanted to get that correct. All right, sorry, I'm looking at somebody else. So the other player, this is one. If you don't follow Chris Clegg on social media, I really advise you to, because he does a good job, especially on this international class as well. But another name to watch out for is Randy Manuel Reyes Abreu. Already 6'4", 210 and throwing triple digits, expected to sign with the Atlanta Braves as well. That could be a really good steal. I had it right the first time. Sorry. Let me just put a bow on this. Diego Torrens from Cuba. Shouldn't have second guessed myself there. But another player the Braves are expected to sign, Roddy Manuel Reyes Abreu, apparently already hitting triple digits. Kind of worries me when you see young arms doing that early, but could be another big sign for the Atlanta Braves. Some other news around Major League Baseball. The Rangers signed old friend Chris Martin. Look, Chris Martin was great for the Braves. I don't know about you. Maybe it's because I was at the game. It just sticks in my mind. The 2019 series against the Cardinals is one of my more painful series ever as a Braves fan. We just had no business losing that series. And look, Chris Martin had some really good games, some good years with the Atlanta Braves, but I'll just never forget that door opening up with the Braves having, I believe, a 1-run lead in the 8th inning, and Chris Martin coming in to set things up. And he gets injured. Doesn't even get to throw a pitch. Luke Jackson comes in, blows game 1. We go on to lose that series, just a painful series. That is my lasting memory of Chris Martin, unfortunately. But he is a good pitcher, and he signs with the Rangers. Didn't get specifics on that yet. The Royals signed Michael Lorenzen for 1 year, $7 million plus incentives and a $12 million mutual option. So seeing some other teams start to make some moves, and that's good to see get the stove working again, because it's been off for quite a while. But that's most of the news. Also, Hall of Fame voting, that announcement's coming on January 21st. Andrew Jones is at around 73% of ballots that have been revealed. You need 75% to get in. And usually the ballots that are revealed, the ones that aren't revealed, are usually some guys that only put in 1 or 2 names or no names at all. And it usually brings the percentages down from what they are for the ballots that we know. So you really want to be well above 75% on the known ballot. So it is getting better for Andrew Jones. It looks like he definitely has gained some votes already for the ballots that have been revealed, but it's looking like he's not going to get there. Who is going to get there? It's looking like CC Sabathia, Ichiro, and Billy Wagner, which would be a pretty solid class. Be great if Wags finally got in. But that's all the news around Major League Baseball right now. Again, not a lot happening until late Monday night. We did finally get something. Not a lot happening for the Atlanta Braves. Hector Gomez, I'll talk about this for a moment. But Hector Gomez sent out a post on X, says Braves Marcel Ozuna looking for his first 50 home run season in 2025. Been a lot of reports of Marcel slimming down, even some people speculating that maybe he'll get some time in the outfield, as the Braves, certainly could use another outfielder definitely for the beginning of the season. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I don't necessarily want to see Marcel Ozuna in the outfield again. But I'll say this, it makes me a little nervous. And I'm sure Hector Gomez is just saying this because Marcel Ozuna looks good. But he admitted to himself, or to us and himself, at the end of last year, where he had that little struggle at the end of the season. It's because he was trying to get that 40th home run. I do not want to see a version of Marcel Ozuna again that is home run or nothing. That's the Marcel Ozuna that was so awful for 2 years in Atlanta. I want to see that complete Marcel Ozuna. I'd rather see him hit 260, 270 with 35 to 40 home runs than see him sell out for power and not be that complete hitter that we've seen for the past 2 seasons. So if you can do both and be a 50 home run hitter, great. But I don't want to see that guy who is selling out for power again, like we saw in the past. And like he admitted, he was trying to do the last week or so of the season where he really started to struggle. So again, excited to see Marcel Ozuna. He does look great. Could he hold the outfield for a little while? Here's a scenario for you while we're just speculating here. Let's say Drake Baldwin comes into spring training and just lights it up with the bat, and the Braves think the bat is ready. Could you live with Marcel Ozuna in the outfield for a period of time until Acuna is back and put Drake Baldwin at the DH? Again, assuming the bat is legit, he earns it during spring training, and the Braves say, we just cannot hold this bat down any longer. And you put Drake Baldwin at DH and put Marcel Ozuna in the outfield at sometimes. How do you feel about that? If the Braves don't make any move for the outfield, but they feel like Baldwin's bat is ready, and you get him in the DH spot and you get Ozuna in the outfield I don't know. That's an interesting thought, I think, right there. I don't think it's going to happen, and I still would rather the Braves go out and get a proven outfielder and not have to rely on a rookie. But the Wild One is a big believer in Baldwin, so maybe he thinks that that's a possibility. But something to think about as we all speculate and wait on the Braves to do something. I don't care. Give me the fake rumors. Again, anything at this point to give us something to talk about. But thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Joe Me, Big Bear will be okay, but let's keep that glove put away. Look at the rhyming there. Appreciate that. Mass Boost, don't start Baldwin's clock. It's somewhat pointless to start the year. I don't agree with that. If the Braves think he can help them win games, you don't worry about clocks for a team that is trying to compete and win a World Series. I don't worry about starting anybody's clock that early. Again, I don't think this is going to happen, and I don't even know if I think it should happen. I'm just throwing the idea out there, more so because of Ozuna. And perhaps the idea of letting him play some in the outfield until Ronald is back. And when Ronald comes back, he's going to need some time at DH, which might mean he might have to put Ozuna in the outfield to keep his bat in the lineup. But I don't agree with holding somebody's clock back if you think they can help you win now. It's a team that's ready to compete. They're in their window. If Drake Baldwin is one of the best bats on the roster, put him on the roster. That's just how I feel about it for a team that, is looking to compete. But thank everybody else for joining as well. Doc, Joe, Laroban, said you hadn't been in it for a while. Thanks for joining back. Mass, the Wild One, Brian Saul in here as well. Bill Whittingham. Thank you all for joining today's live podcast. Thanks for your comments as well and your questions. We will get some news eventually. I promise you. Something will happen this offseason. Maybe I shouldn't have promised that. I don't want to become a liar. But I do think something will happen eventually. And I think it'll happen this month. I think it will happen before opening day. And hopefully it happens soon because I'm getting just as anxious as all of you. All right, but thank you for joining me today on today's podcast. Again, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit that thumbs up button, leave me a comment down below. Make sure you follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we will talk to you next time.